Hello forest folk, and as you see we're out in the Wood World studio woods this afternoon, and as you see it's a beautiful sunny afternoon, and we're graced with the presence of our in-house arborealist, who's just actually doing some upper canopy surveying, just to have a look and see what's occurring as the bud burst happens. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have a little look, share with you some of the footage that we've got of our upper canopy, and Kevin's also going to share some of the wisdom that he's accrued over the last 50 years of arborealising. So anyway, I'll pass you over to Kevin and we'll see you in a moment.
Well, this used to be a small holding, and this hillside was grassland, managed by cattle. And then when the small holding ceased, obviously the grass began to take over and it sort of emerged towards scrub. So the decision was made, I guess 30 years ago now, to plant trees. And first of all, we went for a mix of oak, and at that time we were experimenting with manna ash, Fraxinus ormus. And as you see, down the line, the oak is doing extremely well, and in amongst it now, we planted hazel, which we did, what I suppose, around 10, 15, 20 years ago maybe. Can't quite remember when it was actually planted, but we put it in between. We've since tried to manage little bits of areas of it by coppicing, and again, it variable results. Some have done quite well, others not so. But the oak itself, as you see, is heading towards sort of semi-youth, probably teenagers at the moment, and it's a typical a Quercus petraea, this particular one. Quercus petraea is the native oak of the southwest, petraea meaning of the rocks, and it does extremely well. Usually is not affected by a gall of any type. The leaves are usually extremely healthy, very strongly green and leathery, and yeah, it's a nice area of woodland. This time of the year, of course, when there's not the full canopy, a lot of sunlight coming through to the ground. At the moment, this is led to blackberries taking over, but what we've been trying to do is to manage those out by cutting them back periodically, reducing them down to this sort of thing, and then hopefully in between we've got bluebells locally. It'd be an idea soon to start collecting the seed pods of the bluebell, and as the leaf litter begins to increase from the accumulation and the humus layer begins to accumulate, it might be possible to begin to introduce the bluebell, which would be its natural habitat.
So, Kevin, what's been some of the issues that you've encountered establishing in this area of woodland?
Initially, your main problem is the regrowth of the scrub, and you will end up with them being overtopped if you're not careful, particularly by bramble. Although in fairness, it did take a while for the bramble to get going, and maybe the trees were 3 to 4 years old before the brambles began to use them, in point of fact, as a way of overtopping, and eventually we had brambles sort of started to grow up into the trees. But until you got the canopy to sort of close over, you're not really going to make that much headway with actually suppressing the ground flora. But once you get to that point of the canopy closing over, then it's probably worthwhile going through and hitting it fairly substantially, taking it right back as closely as you can, back to the bare soil almost, in order really to enable the more native, the more natural woodland plants to be able to sort of take over. And we do have a few in the lower story now, which are sort of beginning to sort of compete with the brambles, which don't come back quite as strongly as they did, because again the canopy is now closing over and the light is being, they're being suppressed. I do remember after the first cutting back that we then had areas which were quite open, and what we decided to do, thinking ahead, that we wanted an understory eventually, so for when these trees grew to their more mature height, we planted hazel, which is a typical understory shrub, and also it's an easier shrub to manage. I mean, you can cut hazel down almost down to ground level and regenerate it over a period of time. So every sort of 7 to 10 years, for example, you can cut hazel back and then let it go. In the meantime, the oaks are getting taller, thicker, wider, and so on, and eventually you end up with a nice mixture within the canopy. So I've come down to have a look at the hazel, one of the hazels that we planted, because we noticed this bark removal here down on these shoots here, and our conjecture on this is that it's probably deer. It's very interesting that over time, I mean, the initial problem would have been with rabbits attempting to eat the young shoots of the oak when it was down at their level. Obviously they've grown well past them now. Squirrels aren't so much of a problem, not with oaks. There are other trees which have got sweeter bark and easier bark to strip off, that the grey squirrel has a tendency to attack, and these have also gone past the stage at which grey squirrels are more likely to attack them. We're now really getting into the realm of the megafauna of these areas, which is what you're looking to sort of try to establish or encourage to arrive in your area in the rewilding process. So looking at the ground here, there is beginning to be quite a nice accumulation of leaf litter. This is this year's, down on the top obviously, and then underneath that we've then got the previous years, which is now beginning to rot down very well. Actually, there's a little hawthorn seedling here which will be interesting in the future. Let's see what that's doing. And although I can't really see, mind you, I might need a microscope to be able to see if there is actually fungal mycelium actually establishing itself it's not always possible to see because very, very fine threads that the fungal mycelium sort of. There are some little fine white threads here in this, so it's not been that long in its establishment, so it'd be a bit optimistic, shall we say, to see a great deal of evidence. But I've noticed before with oak, even with oak seedlings, when you come to transplant them, you quite often see evidence of the fungi associated with them is already in there, in sort of in amongst the roots, helping the roots extract the maximum amount of nutrient and moisture from the soil, which is one of the jobs that fungi does. So lower down and closer to the river, we have some more mature trees in this area, trees previous to the planting up here, and also this is where the main crop or the main area of bluebells exist. And I was mentioning before about the possibility of us collecting the seeds from the bluebells and spreading them up into the woodland. And here, if you look around here, you'll see that they also are doing that job for themselves. This area was heavy scrub and was cleared back. And what has actually happened is that rather than scrub coming back, bluebells have moved into this area very successfully. Of course, an area of woodland is not all about trees. Very, very important are these open glade areas, which are absolutely essential if you want to have butterflies and a more diverse insect species involved in your woodland. Very, very important. So remember that. It's not all trees. Look at this. Look at this tree. Ah. Hug a tree. It's free.
Anyway, well, I think that's pretty much us done for today. And we'll see you again soon.